How much should you pay for a content editor? Well, the short answer is probably about 20 to 30 bucks an hour. But if you want to learn the detail as to why exactly that is, and the whole it depends side of the answer, then keep listening. We're going to cover that today. So the first thing with a content editor is, why are we saying pay them per hour? We don't pay any of our other freelance staff per hour, really. The thing with a content editor versus a writer, though, is that the amount of work they have to do doesn't depend on the length of article. Some articles just don't need any editing, so they can be done in a few seconds, really. And you don't want to be paying them per word on something like that. So that's why we don't pay them per word. And the same kind of rule applies to per post, because some take longer than others. Why 20 to 30 bucks an hour? Well, it's a supply and demand thing, as with most pricing. If you're in a medical niche, or you need a lawyer to write for your blog, or a rocket scientist or something, it's pretty hard to find those people with those kind of qualifications and skills. Exactly. Who are willing to work on your blog. So you're going to have to pay an arm and a leg for that. Now, if you're in a niche where a lot of people have those skills, like let's say cats, a lot of people have cats, a lot of people know about cats. And if you need an editor for your cat blog, then that's not going to be too difficult to find, because there's a lot of people who have those skills. So you've just got to understand.
My grandma actually, she could use that job. She's pretty good.
Well, grandma's not so much. I mean, I don't want to be like all ageist and stuff here, but in general, people with traditional backgrounds, or even like English lit majors, people who have studied, not quite editing, but studied English at university, they write in very long sentences. They don't really understand the web as much as someone who just uses the web all the time, like short, snappy content. They don't understand about keywords and things which keep people's attention. So just to get back to my previous point, though, around the niche. So it's a supply and demand thing. And for most general niches where a lot of people can do it, 20 to 30 bucks an hour is about the right sort of level. SEO, by the way, is another one of those niches. Quite hard to find people who are good editors. I would say as well that if you do find someone who's cheap, it's not always worth it. Like, be very, very careful. You will find out there, if you go on Upwork, say, you'll find people advertising that they're editors for 10 bucks an hour or even less. But often that's just people who are going to be doing spelling and grammar and following some basic kind of Associated Press AP guidelines. And while that can be helpful, if that's a problem, a writer should generally be able to do those things correctly. Or if you're using like Grammarly or Hemingway app, they should kind of have that under control, more or less. And it doesn't really make a huge difference in most sites. Where you really get value out of the editor in bringing up the overall quality of your article is that like final 10% of things that they do that is really hard to measure. This is like the creative ideas they come up with, the cohesiveness that they bring to a blog if you have multiple writers working on it, and little things like that you can't track and you can't measure, and you can't always say, hey, did they do this thing that gets me the extra 10% quality, yes or no? And if you just consider, like, if you're not paying someone very much, if they're underpaid, how much extra effort do they tend to put into working for you? So you have to kind of balance that out. That's why we don't really go for cheaper editors in that sense. As I said before, you also tend to have to pay for someone with experience editing a blog. And anyone who's been working on websites for a while, who knows things like keywords, how that fits in, who knows maybe a little bit of SEO, maybe use a tool like Surfer or something, that's definitely someone you should be interested in hiring. But they have been around, they have some experience, so they're not starting off on minimum wage. They know the value of their work, and you're going to have to pay a little bit more for someone like that, hence the $20 to $30 range as well. I'd say, like, sometimes you can get people sort of $15 an hour if it's in like a very, very broad niche like pets or something like that. But again, I would always tend to start my search about the $20 level. And then you also need to look for someone who's going to be very, very motivated and like embedded in your team. as I said, the small things make a huge difference. And if you are paying someone on like a different payment method per word or however you're doing it, if it's not per hour, it's very difficult to bring that person in to your team meetings, to do kind of hourly one-on-ones, like once a week or however often you're doing with them. And those kind of platforms where you and your team and all your writers and everyone's kind of like chatting and discussing things and coming up with ideas, that's where some of like the best ideas from editors come. We had an example a couple years ago. The site we sold last year, actually, it's on our blog, the case study of that. But the editor actually came up with a really good scoring system, or the basis for the scoring system, which we eventually used on a lot of our reviews and roundups on that site. And it was in one of these meetings that it came up. So if you have it in your mind that an editor is just going to be someone that's you talk to once a month on Upwork or Asana as you're just assigning work and never involve them in your company, then you're not going to get these extra cool ideas and like the quality level up that you want to be getting from having an editor and from hiring an editor as well. So yeah, if there's no platform for these creative ideas, then they generally aren't going to come out. And the editor is just going to not be aligned with you and what you're expecting, and the writers aren't going to be aligned with that as well. So very, very important as well. And that's pretty much it. Not much more to say on that. Any thoughts, Gael?
Should you promote your best writers to become editors? Or
Yes.
should you hire external editors? Because you're losing a writer when you do that, right?
Yeah, so I would always say that it's worth it to promote a writer to an editor. And they don't just have to like stop writing completely and just be an editor, although if there's enough work, that's a good thing. I say it's much easier to find a writer than it is to find a good editor. So if you've worked with someone, if you know they know your space, if you work well with them, if they're really a core part of your team, then 100% you should promote those people up the chain. And yeah,
So it's the best path to actually hire a good writer, then be the editor yourself, then promote that writer to be the editor and hire more writers.
Well, I mean, in general, I think the best path is to bring people into your organization on kind of lower levels and then promote them when they do really well. Those, at least in our experience, those types of employees tend to perform a lot better than bringing in someone at a high level. Sometimes it works, but there's more risk that it's not going to work out in that situation because they don't fit in with you. You don't work well with them, or they don't just fit in with the organization in general. But for editors, like 100%, I would promote people like that.
That's how I like to do as well. Like I like being the editor at the beginning because it allows me to set the tone for the website, and I'm freaking hard on content. And it allows me to essentially, like, the writers that don't quit and still want to write for me, they're probably like they're probably on board with that, and so it allows me to. It's the best interview for an editor in my opinion. So I like the idea of like at least being the editor at the beginning and then switching to that person editing the content for you, and maybe working together on the editorial guidelines as you're correcting their content as well. I think if you can involve people, maybe give them some bonuses if they help you or something like that, then.
And like if you're a sort of more advanced site owner, maybe you have a portfolio and this is the 10th site you've started. Most people in that position, they're not going to be writing the content themselves. But in that situation, I think it's still a good idea to edit yourself at the beginning, so to be the editor. So for that reason as well, an editor is often someone that's brought in not at the start of a project, it's brought in later. So there may actually be enough time to promote a writer to the editor by the time you need an editor.
Yep, I think so. So that's basically it for this episode, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, there is a subscribe button below this video. You can click on the subscribe button so you don't miss any videos. And if you click on the bell next to it, then you will miss no videos because you get notifications for all of them. If you like it, you can drop us a like. And if you want this podcast on audio platforms, we are also on Spotify. We are also on Google Podcasts. I'm always terrible at this. We're also on SoundCloud, and we're also on pretty much any podcast platform. So just go and look for Tire Hacker there, and you can have the audio version of that podcast if you'd rather us do that. If you like the daily format that we've been doing for a little bit now, tell us in the comments as well, or tweet at us, because we're not sure where to go next. We're going to try this for 2 weeks in total and then decide based on your feedback. So let us know, do you want daily podcast? Do you want weekly podcast? Do you want short stuff? Do you want longer stuff? This will help us knowing what to do.
Or a mix of both.
I don't like the idea of putting a mix of both on the feed, to be honest. Like, it's kind of like mixing different types of pasta.
But we're going a bit off script here, but I just want to share with the audience a bit of insight here. So we do, if we do a daily podcast, one a day, they tend to be sort of like 10 minutes or so. But sometimes we might want to interview a guest, and do we want to interview them have 5 episodes with that guest, or is that like maybe a longer interview?
Yeah, that's how I would do. I would just take one question and just have 5 and then just release them randomly. But anyway, this is not the topic. Please, thank you for watching. Please come tomorrow. There will be another episode. Have a good day.